The best way to learn a language. A fail-proof method. So, what's the best way to learn a new language? Okay, so it's perhaps an impossible question to answer. And yet, as language geeks, we've been obsessed with finding the answer for several years. The problem is that if you ask 100 different successful polyglots, those people who speak many languages, how they do it, you will most likely get 100 different answers. But what do they all have in common? We were determined to find the answer. We've watched all the videos we could find on language learning. We've attended several language conferences worldwide. We've read dozens of books on efficient language learning and learned multiple languages ourselves. We've discovered that the answer is actually quite simple. It's no miracle. It all comes down to finding the right balance between two concepts we're all very familiar with. Theory, find great learning resources to build up your knowledge, and practice. Train your skills almost every day in a way you love. Theory and practice. You need both to learn almost any skill. Sure, it sounds really obvious, but most people who fail at language learning were not able to find that perfect balance between theory and practice. The balancing act is the tricky part. Too much of either will give you very limited results. Almost everything is learned that way. A doctor goes to medical school to learn the theory, then puts that theory into practice during their medical internship. You want to learn how to play the guitar? You need to learn a bit of theory, then pick up a guitar and practice for several hours. Yep, it's that simple, but it's not always easy to apply when it comes to learning a new language. The problem with traditional methods: not enough practice. If you've ever learned a language in school, you were probably never able to reach high levels because you didn't get nearly enough practice. All you learn during those long hours in class is theory. It's very possible to study a language for years without being able to use it. You can build a huge bank of knowledge in your mind, but without enough practice, you have nothing more than a bunch of jumbled vocabulary words and grammar rules. Practice is what truly brings the language together. The problem with beginners: not enough theory. On the other hand, practicing a new language without any knowledge of the building blocks required to understand how the language works is like trying to bake a cake without any ingredients. You're just stirring up an empty bowl. And yes, your head is the empty bowl. You need to practice the theory, and you need to continually strike that perfect balance between the two. This balance will gradually change as you get more advanced in the language. The beginning stages will be heavier on theory, then practice should slowly take over as your level in the language increases, and eventually, practice is all you need to continue improving. Learning a language versus acquiring a language. Languages enter our brain in two very important ways. The first one being conscious learning. This is when you're actively trying to remember new words, to understand grammar rules, to pronounce certain letters, etc. This is the theory aspect. The second way languages enter our brain is through lots of input exposure to the language, either through reading or listening. This is how we acquire languages naturally without much conscious effort. You simply sit down and you let the words flow in, and your brain will start to form new bonds and to notice recurring patterns and learn new words from context. But there's a catch. Languages can only be acquired naturally through comprehensible input. This is a hypothesis by linguist Stephen Krashen, PhD in linguistics, who has written a lot of publications on second language acquisition. This simply means that the general message of what you're reading or listening to needs to be understandable to some extent for language acquisition to work. If you don't understand a single word, you won't learn anything from it. You could listen to audiobooks for hundreds of hours in a new language and not improve at all. If it's just noise to you, your brain will filter it right out. Your brain loves to simply ignore the things it doesn't understand. The material has to mean something. On the other hand, if you understand the general message or idea, you will learn many words from context. The problem is that when you're a complete beginner in a new language, nothing is comprehensible. It's just a bunch of sounds other people make with their mouths that mean absolutely nothing to you. We need to fix that by actively learning some language theory. Theory, finding great learning resources. For most people, it's unthinkable to simply practice the language as a beginner and get great results. Reading a book will be frustrating, and talking to someone will be pretty much impossible. Even television shows and audiobooks will be totally incomprehensible. Immersion is only effective if you take care not to drown in the language. Otherwise, you'll simply feel overwhelmed, and it'll give you a sense of, this is not for me, or learning a language is too hard. It's the equivalent of giving someone a violin and saying, "Here, play this," or throwing someone in the water and saying, "There, swim." We need to learn some theory first, and we do this with great resources. It could be a computer program like WeKnow, but it can be anything you find useful for your needs. Practice. Train your skills doing what you love. The word love here is essential. The most important thing when practicing your new language is to enjoy what you do. Polyglots throughout the world all seem to learn languages in very different ways, and yet they all succeed. Some language learners rave about the power of reading. Others swear by speaking from day one. Others mostly watch television and listen to podcasts. The answers seem different for everyone, but in the end, they're all saying the same thing. They're simply stating what they love doing to learn languages, and this becomes the best way to learn for them. It makes sense, doesn't it? When you love what you do, it becomes much easier to stay motivated, and learning becomes a seamless experience. The best way to learn a language is to truly enjoy the ride. Once you've learned a bit of theory, it's all about making the language part of your life and finding ways to practice that don't seem like a chore. If you don't like to read in your native language, it would be absurd to make reading your main learning activity. If you're a shy introvert, speaking to people as a beginner will give you anxiety attacks. You need to try out different things. You'll eventually find the perfect way to practice your language. Learning a language takes a long time. There's no way around it. The hours you spend practicing this language can be long and painful, or fun and exciting. The brain learns a lot better when the content is relevant and interesting. Plus, the truth is that if you don't find a way to enjoy the learning process, it'll be next to impossible to keep it up in the long run, and you'll likely give up before you reach any kind of fluency. There's an incredible amount of things you can do to practice your new language. Just make sure to choose content that's appropriate for your current skill level at first. You could watch simple children's shows, read simple books, change your Facebook feed, listen to the audio version of your favorite novels, or even listening to music can help. It's all about making it part of your life as much as possible. Conclusion. In the end, it all comes down to this. Strike the perfect balance between theory and practice, and make sure you practice the language in a way you love. Finding things you enjoy doing will ensure that it's not a burden to put in some time every day. If you can do that, you're guaranteed to make a lot of progress in your new language. If you're interested in learning a new language, we've combined everything we know from years of language acquisition and research to create an awesome language learning program that'll take care of the theory part of the equation, but it will also give you plenty of practice. It'll teach you everything you need to know to become independent in the language you want to learn. You can find us at weknow.com. That's OUINO.com. Thanks.